Clarissa, and thank you for having us here. It's a great conference so far, and I did my undergrad at UT Austin, so it's always good to be back in Texas, especially in Austin, which is my favorite city. So like Clarissa was saying, I'm a journalist for Forbes, and I'm also the co-host of a podcast called the Bad Crypto Podcast. Thank you. So I'm excited to be here today to meet everyone and to moderate this panel, and I will let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves now.
I'm Frank Robles, the Vice President of Operations from Digital Town. We have a smart city solution that helps people search for local businesses, find local, and buy local. It's a phone app, and we've begun rolling that out here in Austin. It's been very effective.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Brandon Buchanan. I'm the founder and general partner of a cryptocurrency fund called Iterative. We're a large-scale cryptocurrency miner. We also run an OTC desk, and we have 2 investment vehicles right now that are fully deployed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Thorson. I'm COO of Yeomans Capital. We are a single-family office based here in Austin, Texas. We have about 40 companies in our portfolio. And what makes us unique is when we make an investment, we work very actively with those projects to help accelerate growth. So it's kind of more of a traditional, it's kind of cross between venture capital and, say, private equity is how we operate.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miguel Fernandes. I'm from Portugal. I'm developing the digital ecosystem down there, and we're focusing very much on blockchain, and I'm the CEO and founder of a software house down in Portugal as well.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. So we will start the business panel now. And the first question is, why are businesses getting involved in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space?
Sure. So I'll start. I'll kick us off. So our family office is involved with a lot of different projects from very early stage to later stage. And so we come across a lot of businesses and a lot of also institutional investors. So we have a pretty wide view of the ecosystem as a whole. And what we're seeing is the reason why a lot of these companies are entering into crypto is because they're kind of being forced into it. We're seeing a lot of the top talent from these companies encouraging the management of these companies to explore crypto. They're coming to the table with a lot of benefits that from a technical perspective are very obvious. But what happens is it disrupts a lot of the financial models of those businesses and the kind of the reasons why they have a profit in the first place. So what's happening is a lot of these engineers, a lot of these employees, this top talent, they're leaving these companies. And so as a way of retaining these companies are starting to integrate blockchain into their business practice. So it's almost a defense mechanism. You know, they're being kind of like squeezed or forced in a way into the space because it's such a disruptive technology to their underlying business. So I'll let the other panelists kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you said. I think a lot of it comes down to 2017 really caught the attention of, you know, retail investors, but also major institutional investors as well. And so, you know, on the backs of that, you know, the folks felt the need to participate. So, you know, even now at an institutional level, you're seeing reports from Bank of America, from Citibank. They're actually reporting about cryptocurrency as if it's like a major stock, right? And so now we see companies like Bitmain that are preparing for IPOs. We see Coinbase raising large rounds at $8 billion valuations. And so as the asset class continues to mature, it really behooves everyone from venture capitalists all the way up to get involved. And so, at least that's what I've seen in my experience.
When you say business, I think there's 2. There's historic business, a little bit like Mark was talking about, existing companies. A good example I have would be Dun & Bradstreet. Very old company doing financial information on businesses, and now they're getting into the blockchain, and they've created an oracle that people can use to leverage their existing data set, so it continues keeping them relevant. But also there's a lot of startup company activity, as we all have seen, and there's a lot of opportunities there. And it's a little bit like Innovator's Dilemma. I mean, it's an example of that, where businesses have gotten successful on one path, and if you come at it with this new angle, you can have a much rapid incline. And we're seeing examples of that. That's where those economics come in. That's why people are tracking it. That's why people are beginning to invest in the space, because others can now look from the outside world at proof, that these successful businesses have occurred. So let's do more of that.
Right. Thank you. And speaking of opportunities, let's talk a little bit about the opportunities for institutional investors. I mean, that's a hot topic right now, and we're seeing a lot of that in the space, how institutional investors are entering. Can we talk about why and what solutions are being proposed now to kind of help facilitate that?
Sure, I'll take that one. We are board members of an organization called Silicon Valley Blockchain Society. This is an organization that's geared towards institutional investors and shepherding them into the space, providing education resources, things like that. It was founded by the former chairman of the $18 billion San Francisco pension, and he founded it just over a year ago. And since then, he's launched about 5 chapters around the world of this organization. And right now, the membership represents about $1.5 trillion of assets that they personally manage in their various institutions. So pensions, endowments, sovereign wealth funds, hedge funds, corporates. What's happening is these institutions are expecting a recession in the next quarter or two. Some are predicting Q1 2019 as soon as that. And they're looking for an uncorrelated asset class to invest in. And crypto provides that in a very unique way. And they're trying to learn as much as they possibly can right now. I think there's going to be a big wave of institutional capital that comes into the space in 2019. And so what you're seeing is a lot of interest. Like they're studying it, they're learning about it, they're networking, they're trying to meet all the best players, all the top minds of the space. I presented on a panel, or rather I moderated a panel in Dallas about a week and a half ago, and it was geared towards investment advisors of various sizes, from like more for retail all the way up to institutional. And what's happening is their clients, the investors, are basically forcing them into the space, right? So traditionally, when you want to buy something, you go to your broker and you say, "Buy me this." What's happening is these clients, from small retail investors all the way to institutional, buy it directly and then go to their broker and say, "Here, manage it for me." So it's a very different paradigm. And you're going to see the space transform, I think, in 2019, very much so, with the influx of this institutional capital.
Yeah, I guess if I could just add a couple things to that. I agree with everything you said. Really with institutional investors, they really don't put the cart before the horse. And so this is such a nascent asset class that it's really hard for them to get involved, really until a few years transpire, right? So I think, for institutions to even invest in a fund or to do some sort of fund-to-fund model, the fund itself actually has to have, a track record, right? I can't go to Yale Endowment and get them to invest when I'm a new fund that just started in 2017 or 16. They need to see a track record. So I think we're at a point now, where institutions can participate in pre-IPO rounds, like I said, for Bitmain and things like that. I think folks are optimistic that an ETF will get passed sometime in 2019. I think you're starting to see institutions do more direct investments. I think the venture model is starting to come back around as opposed to sort of the ICO model. So venture capitalists like Andreessen Horowitz and folks like that, who were acting as sort of Trojan horses and investing in groups like Polychain, but then also co-investing in token offerings. I think now you're seeing that shift go upwards, where institutions are participating too. So.
Right, and Brandon, you bring up an interesting point that I kind of wanted to talk about as well, the state of ICOs, because I just published an article on Forbes about what's going on in Israel, for instance, and they aren't looking at ICOs, but rather raising money through other means. So can you guys kind of elaborate on, are ICOs dead, and how, what do you think the space looks like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, they're very much not dead, right? I mean, I can look at my LinkedIn and my emails. I'm getting emails about them all the time still. Our group, we don't invest in ICOs. Ironically, we did one of the first ICO vehicles. We led Storage's ICO round in mid-2017. We had also done a venture investment in that company and seeded them. So we were comfortable with the group, we were comfortable with the product, and still, I think to this day, they're one of the only crypto companies that have moved beyond just white paper and actually have a working prototype. So no, I guess to your question, I don't think ICOs are dead, but I think the regulatory world has shifted what it's become. And so it's starting to mirror what a traditional financing looks like, and really trying to be what crowdfunding, I guess, wanted to be. But that's my take. I guess that's something.
I do think that ICOs as a mechanism, they will continue to exist. The big hype and a lot of ICOs burned the concept because of they were too hyped and there was nothing there. But the mechanism, I think it opens a lot of opportunities, and we will continue to see them. In the next years, I truly believe after this bad hype has settled down a little bit, we'll see more ICOs probably and companies being funded through ICOs. So the answer also it's yes, there's been a very bad reputation around them. No, I don't think they're going to disappear as a mechanism. I do think they are an opportunity, and we will continue to see them as a mechanism.
I think a lot has to do with regulation. There was a lot of bad actors mixed in the last batch of ICOs, and there's a lot of repercussions from that, and that created a lot of new regulation, particularly in the United States. So ICOs in the United States, are definitely a trailing factor, and they're kind of being forced outside the United States. But there was a lot of energy behind people wanting to create them. They made the mechanisms. They started creating this machine to allow people to create ICOs faster. And there's groups of people going around sponsoring those things around the planet. So I think it's a trailing factor. I do think it's a valuable way to raise money, similar to the crowd raising thing that Brandon had brought up. It's much more credible. It's much more trackable than crowdfunding. So it's probably, as a mechanism, it's good, but I do see it as a trailing factor, particularly in the United States, due to regulation. And the regulation still needs to be figured out. I mean, this is still a moving thing. I just had a talk recently with a bunch of federal regulators, actually, and they're still now defining what the regulation should be and what approaches people should take, particularly for the United States, and that impacts the planet.
Right, good points. So let's talk a little bit about blockchain. What are the business opportunities in terms of blockchain technology, and how are businesses utilizing blockchain technology for business opportunities?
I'll start. Well, a couple of things. There's a lot of opportunity. Bitcoin isn't blockchain. Blockchain presents an amazing solution that people are beginning to leverage. One thing that we did after doing a lot of work creating the solutions for ourselves, we created an open API to allow other people to utilize our blockchain platform. I'm sort of viewing it as a blockchain OS or a blockchain SDK to allow others to build apps on our APIs. And people are beginning to do that, and those are legitimate businesses. There's one thing that we tried recently for electronic band tipping. So we used our exact APIs recently, and we're starting to do this on 6th Street, where people can electronically tip bands using this API. Right? It doesn't need my phone app, and they're doing it. And some of these bands are getting more money than they've ever gotten before because people aren't carrying cash, and they're not going to walk up to the stage and find your bucket and put money in it. But they can electronically tip you using the same solution. That's a little solution, doesn't change the world, but does change that guy's life. We did another one similarly for the homeless. The mayor of Austin had a blockchain competition for the homeless. Like, how can first of all, his question was, is blockchain the right solution for the homeless? And secondly, they had a problem to solve. We were able to use that same platform, and over the weekend, me and a couple of my team members created a solution that functioned, where a homeless person can take and pay money using a QR code, as well as attach all of their medical documents to that same QR code. And they've since adopted it, and they're using it as part of a Bloomberg proposal to raise money in Austin that actually do that. So there's lots of opportunities like that in just leveraging blockchain, practical solutions that change people's lives. It's not ICOs, it's not making tokenized currency, it's using that to make a difference.
Okay. In our building, there's a company called Factum, and I think they have kind of a really good real-world use case that most people can understand. So when you look at the real estate market, land titles, things like this, every time that you transact, you sell one asset between two parties, each party has a copy of the record, and every single time it transacts, every time it changes hands, has to go through an audit. And what you're having are basically duplicate records of everyone, and that has to be reconciled every single time the asset changes hands. So with blockchain, you're able to facilitate that. You're able to remove that middleman, remove that downtime and all the costs associated with that process, because it's on a ledger, it's on an open ledger. And so you can apply that to so many other things. Think of all the assets that we trade on a daily basis or annually basis. You buy a car, you buy a boat or any type of different asset that you're trying to trade between two parties. This is a way of facilitating that, removing a lot of the complexity, a lot of the kind of like the vagueness around, are your records complete? Are mine complete? Do I trust you? Do you trust me? And so it provides a lot of that efficiency.
I think that story that you told us a few minutes ago about the platform and we cannot foresee the business opportunities, I think that would be a good context, and then maybe I'll talk.
Sure. So I can't take credit for this. This is actually my friend Tushar from Multicoin Capital, but he gives this analogy of when he's asked, what's the opportunity you see in blockchain? Like, what's the biggest opportunity you see in blockchain? He ties it to the early days of the internet. When back in the 90s or the early 2000s, if you were being asked, what's the biggest opportunity in the internet, you can never really foresee it. But right now, we look at some of the largest companies in the world and we say, oh my gosh, how could we have imagined the Ubers, the Lyfts, the Facebooks of the world? And so when he was a kid, he had two rules. You don't get into a stranger's car and you don't meet people off the internet. And so now we literally meet people off the internet to get into their car on a daily basis, right? And these are multi-billion-dollar companies that seem obvious from today's standpoint. So hindsight's 2020. So looking forward, in blockchain, it's very difficult to forecast what is going to be that Uber, what is going to be that next Lyft opportunity. So this is why I feel like when someone asks me what's the biggest opportunity in blockchain, it's hard for me to answer that question because it's a very different paradigm. It's a very different mindset. With new technology comes completely different business models, new governance models, which is the reason why the space is so exciting, right?
I asked you to tell that story because for me it's exactly the way that I've been seeing this space. So running a software company and whatnot, I've been trying to foresee what are the business opportunities so that then I can go and provide these services to the potential market. So in the last 2-3 years, that's the only thing that I've been obsessed about, and I've been going from meetup to conference, trying to ask this question to a lot of people. And my answer counts for what it counts. I would say digital identity, it's a big thing, and I think that's we could have just a panel about that and the opportunities that open. And the other one, I would say machine-to-machine transactions, like you've mentioned, IoT. I think those two areas alone could have their own panel. In digital identity, for me, it's very close to me. For example, patient record, it was already mentioned there, and if you have that layer of information on Factum or something else, then multiple dApps and new startups can arise accessing this new information. School records, cognitive knowledge about your personal being. So if you have a kid and he goes to school from 4 to 18, everything that he learned and where he's good at and he's weak at, we should protect that data. What apps can we build upon that? So, for example, an artificial intelligence mechanism or an application that can foresee if my kid is getting worse results in mathematics, so we could reinforce that. So we should be able to control this information, and this is my 2 cents on the business opportunities and the biggest areas that I see opportunities there.
So I wanted to comment on what Mark mentioned briefly around deeds and titles. There's a huge opportunity in deeds and titles for blockchain. And then attestation. Miguel was alluding to that, but for medical documents for our solution, the whole point of it was attestation. We were doing it for the homeless, and they lose all their documents. They don't walk around with a file cabinet, but they need all those documents. So that's the reason why they have to attach them to the blockchain. But you get an interesting artifact out of that, because those people who are attaching it, they actually have an account. They have a hash. Right, so that legal professional, that professional at a medical institution, when they attach that document to that homeless person or anybody's file, to their chain, there's attestation that occurs there, and so that's a real person. I can find that person. I can talk to that person. It really occurred. It wasn't artificial. It changes the world, Now, I was there at the beginning. I was in 1994, I was at Netcom. We went IPO. It was the first ISP to go public. I was putting all those things around the world. People can dial in. And so we were creating and launching the internet. And we knew it was a valuable, interesting thing. We had no idea what the possibilities were. And I think blockchain is very similar.
Right, definitely. I mean, I think one of the main business opportunities provided by blockchain is transparency, but with transparency also comes security issues. And now there are different things being created like zero knowledge proof and all of that, but what are your thoughts in terms of businesses wanting to get into blockchain in terms of, keeping your business secure?
So we live with that problem. And it's a difficult one. And when you talk about security, are you securing the machine? Are you securing the device? Are you securing the transmission in between? There's many, many layers here. There's also, most things get hacked through social engineering. So you have to set things up. So it's a structural problem primarily. So I'm kind of run operations, so that's kind of my focus. If you can set these things up structurally correct from the beginning, you can structurally build security into your offering. But it has to be really thought through. Many people rush out there and create something, hack it together, write a white paper, create something, make it function. Security is an afterthought. We can't do that because there's too much at stake.
That's more your world.
That's my world. Anybody else?
I think the silent. So that thing that you were talking, you can only have security if something is blocked and off the grid, so everything can be hackable. With blockchain and decentralizing it, you'd have to hack all nodes at the same time. That does bring a layer of trust and confidence.
Well, it depends on what you want to hack and what you don't want to hack.
Exactly.
Right. So the fact that a transaction occurred, if it's on a public blockchain, everyone's going to see a transaction occurred.
And
But that's the
transparent.
beginning and the end. You can secure everything else. And then you want to secure the execution of that transaction because it'll be distributed amongst many machines. And so that'll give you long-term protection so someone doesn't update all those ledgers. Yep. But that's only part of it. You need to keep the whole system has to be secure when you enter data in. So it's writes is your real problem, not reads, if it's a public chain. If you're doing a private chain, you've got both ends you've got to worry about.
Yep.
I just want to add one thing. So what excites me about the security aspect of blockchain is the opportunity that additional security unlocks, right? So with traditional, whenever you're analyzing a startup or any company, the question is, are you reducing costs or are you increasing revenue, right? Like which way does it work? And with blockchain, it kind of has both. But for me, the part that excites me is the revenue unlocking opportunity, right? So if you look at something like, if you're looking at a biotech company, right? They're always looking for data, like DNA data, right? With blockchain, you're able to abstract identity from that data. And so you can create this essentially global network of DNA data with which some of the top researchers in the world can now analyze. So those are the types of exciting opportunities that excite me.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of what I was going to touch on, but I think your question kind of went also to, obviously there's the security of a transaction, which is critical, right? But then I think there's also, you're worried about if you're leaving a footprint, like this sort of the transparency of I've done a transaction, what does that look like? Do I want that? And I think it's become more like a digital world. We're already sort of opting into having this public digital footprint, whether it's social media, whether it's whatever. So I think, our generation and below, I think they're going to be comfortable with this sort of framework, right? So at least that's my take.
So I'm really sensitive to that, especially when it comes to medical information and personal information. I was kind of upset to learn. I have a friend who is an executive at Facebook doing sales. And they buy credit card data. So they can see, I can do targeted ads based upon something that you spent on your credit card. And I don't think credit cards should be able to sell our information like that. So I can say, I can target ad everyone who bought a flight, to Austin today and hit them all with a targeted ad. I don't quite accept that. I don't think that's the social open. Even though some people post it when they hit the airport, great, but that's a choice. But when you take the choice away from people, that becomes more difficult.
Yeah, thank you. So let's switch back now to talking about cryptocurrency. What are some of the biggest challenges businesses are facing right now in terms of getting involved in the crypto market? And what should be done to overcome those challenges and how that will change in the future?
I think the biggest challenge right now is really education. I think there's going to be natural friction because blockchain is going to kind of obliterate some of some of the business units that these companies have. That's just the nature of blockchain. It's going to remove middlemen, and some of these businesses are literally in the business of being middlemen. But for the overarching ecosystem to evolve, these businesses have to adopt it, or new businesses have to spring up. And so this is where education is just so crucial. This is the reason why, at least in our team, like every one of our team members is always presenting on panels. We're always, going to these conferences. We, are members of the Silicon Valley Blockchain Society. We're trying to shepherd in this new wave. And I think that'll come. It's already starting to happen. You're starting to see some of the large corporates, the C-level executives participating in these events. It just takes time. It takes time to convince them. It takes time to show them that, look, if you don't get involved, here's the alternative, right? And if you do, here's how you can potentially work together or, pivot your business model to accept this new technology, because this technology is happening, right? We've kind of reached a tipping point. Even though we're kind of in the middle of a bear market right now, the rate at which new talent is flooding the market is fascinating. Like it hasn't stopped. It's still accelerating even today, right? Where $6,000 Bitcoin as opposed to $20,000 high, and people are still the top minds of Google, Facebook, Amazon. We have these connections. They're leaving these companies in droves, starting their own ventures or joining exciting ones that are already existing. So businesses have to adopt it or accept it or pivot or somehow get into the space, because if they don't have that exposure, even their investors are leaving.
Right. So do you guys believe that, eventually all businesses will be involved in some form? Do you think that's the future?
I do. Yeah. I think they're going to have some exposure to blockchain in some capacity. Yeah.
I would agree. I think it's similar to saying, will all businesses use SQL databases?
Yeah.
Of course, all businesses use SQL databases, but maybe looking back 20 years ago, you could have asked that question. I think it's a similar situation.
Yeah. It's almost like, back when, email was coming out or websites, it's just the next evolution of communication or next evolution of, data protection or data validation. It's just evolutionary.
You want to go to the next question?
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just sort of practical reasons why businesses are having challenges to get into cryptocurrency. I think from a custodial aspect, from an IRS taxation standpoint, I think from really just sort of these, low-hanging fruit warts. I mean, businesses are having challenges getting into it. And then also the volatility of the space. I think that's unnerving for a lot of businesses. But outside of that, I mean, I agree with the other panelists that I think it's going to be ubiquitous and it will be incorporated in some form or fashion into every business that's out there.
Right. And, speaking of custodial solutions, can we talk a little bit about that? I mean, right now there are a few solutions out there, but can you explain, what solutions might be more legitimate than others and why? I mean, we have BitGo and Coinbase and all of that, but, what are your thoughts on custodial solutions? Because that's really big right now to get investors involved.
Yeah, I think they're still coming to market. I think Coinbase has made a big splash over the last several months with what they were bringing to market. It's actually pretty expensive for an institutional investor to use it. I think it's $100,000 or something like that to onboard, and then some basis points on how much crypto that you're holding. So there's some challenges around that, and I'm sure they're tweaking that model for early users. I know Gemini. I think they recently received some sort of charter where they can be custodians as well, and I think they were already registered as a public trust or chartered bank. I can't remember. But for large institutions who custody their investors' capital with a big group like State Street or something like that, I mean, there's regulations around how much capital these folks have to have on the balance sheet to be able to act as custodians. So, I can tell you sort of anecdotally, as a crypto fund, even finding a bank that would, keep our capital, our investor capital, knowing that we were investing in crypto, took us months to do, right? So, you extrapolate that out to a large institution that has, billions and, if you're like BlackRock or Blackstone or whatever, trillions of dollars of assets, I mean, it's a challenge to overcome. So you're not just going to rely on Coinbase. You're not just going to rely on Gemini. You're going to look for some larger solution that has tons of capital in their balance sheet.
The other challenge is that not all custody solutions will custody every asset. So, for example, BitGo will only custody certain, top 10, top 50 projects. If you're looking for some ERC20 token, custody for that, and it's like number 600 on CoinMarketCap, you're going to be hard pressed to find a solution for that. The other challenge is proof of stake tokens, right? So if you're staking or if you're putting your proof of stake tokens into custody, is that custodian going to be earning the reward or not? Are you foregoing that additional revenue? Just last week, I found a custodian that offers staking and custody of proof of stake tokens, right? It's like the first I've ever found. So, just custody solutions that match kind of the blockchain, fingerprints it takes time to evolve because there's some unique parts of crypto that just, custodians never really had to think about before, like staking.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the future of blockchain technology. I just want to know, what are your thoughts on when do you think blockchain will go mainstream in terms of, businesses using this? Like, how long will this take and why, if you have any predictions on that?
Goodness.
We're launching now. I mean, it's starting to happen now. We're starting to get regular businesses using our solution now. There's about 1,000 in Austin signed up, and we're really pushing that. And we're continuing to refine our solution to make it easier and easier and easier for them to adopt. So that's happening like right now.
Sure. So this kind of fits into what our family office does, and we're actually launching a private equity fund because of the model worked really well. We're seeing a lot of demand from businesses, but they need help, right? And so the opportunity that we're seizing is serving as kind of the shepherds of that, the connectors, the ones that building the bridge between the old world and the new world, or the new economy and the old economy. Because there's still that knowledge gap, but they need a little like white glove treatment in helping communicate the terminology, the technology. So I agree that the opportunity can be seized now, but they need help. They need some hand-holding. If it were left to its own, kind of organic growth, so to speak, I'd probably say 1.5 years, 2 years before you start seeing a lot of adoption. But as we kind of alluded to earlier, if these businesses don't seize the opportunity at hand, they're going to be left behind. And all the smart executives know that. And so if you can convince them of the opportunity and they're already kind of sold on it, all you really need is to show them the way. And that's, kind of what we're in the business of doing. And I think, if we do it right, we can onboard them pretty quickly.
Yeah, my approach has been to, once I start explaining that blockchain and tokens, I lose people in talking to business.
Right.
So I've been approaching them more like, here's a solution that solves a problem they have, and I go through the solution component, and they always, then, their eyes get big, they light up, say yes, and then move forward. Because blockchain, gets associated with Bitcoin and then tokenized currencies, and, that's sort of been a roller coaster recently. And so I've just been avoiding of it and just presenting the solution, and that's how I'm getting adoption.
Yeah, that's actually so we have a chief partnerships officer in our team, and that's exactly the strategy he employs. So when he sells these solutions, he doesn't mention blockchain at all. He's like, and that's how you know that you can sell it, is if you don't have to mention blockchain or cryptocurrency.
Right. I mean, I think obviously there's a huge opportunity there for blockchain and cryptocurrency, but we definitely need to raise awareness, differentiate between the two. I was speaking with a good friend of mine who's also in the space, and he believes that it will take 25 years for this to go mainstream. So I was just curious to hear your thoughts on that, because he says, 25 years, everyone's going to know about it, everybody's going to be using it, but 25 years, it's a while, and I think that we're really fortunate to be, early innovators in this space, because, I believe him. In 25 years, this is where we'll be, and everybody's going to know about blockchain just like everybody knows about the internet now.
Right, and when we got into the internet, no one told you about like TCP/IP as the reason why you should get into the space, right? You just thought, hey, I can communicate with my friend, on the other side of the world digitally. That's cool, right? You wanted that. You didn't need to know about the underlying protocol that was running that.
So I've got 2 patents in TCP/IP, so I understand the protocol. But nowadays, I would posit that people don't even think the internet. They use their phone, they buy their service, they order. No one even conceptualizes the internet. I would use my wife as an example. So she travels back and forth between Europe and the U.S., and she uses her phone, and often she's using the internet, and sometimes she may not be. She doesn't know the difference. She wants to order her Uber, or she's sending a message to somebody using one of the apps on her phone. No internet even conceptualizes into these people's brains. And I think that's common, and that's where the ubiquity comes in. And maybe 25 years from now, that's where blockchain will be. I think it's going to happen sooner, and I think we're rapidly approaching that.
Yeah, so I kind of want to challenge that number of the 25 years. So a lot of people, they forecast the growth of this ecosystem based on the growth of the internet. But the thing is that that's not a direct correlation, because back then we didn't have a digital communications channel, right? So the internet is what laid the groundwork for that. Right now, we're already connected, right? Facebook has, I don't even know how many billions of people that are already connected digitally. There are 4.4 billion SMS-enabled phones in the world, right? Like, we're already connected. That infrastructure already exists. So the ability to distribute a new idea globally has never been faster. So I would actually say this space could grow exponentially faster than the internet could, which the internet didn't take 25 years, right? So I don't see this taking that long either.
Great, wonderful. Well, those are great predictions, good information, so thank you. Now I am going to see if anyone in our audience has questions for the panelists.
There's a mic coming.
First off, I'd just like to say thank you. And can we get a round of applause for the panel really quickly? They did awesome, didn't they?
Thank you.
So for my question, a lot of times, especially to people outside of the cryptocurrency space or anyone who really has like a vested interest in crypto, you hear this a lot. Oh, this is a fad. This is going to go away. This is probably not going to be here in a little while. Don't bet on that, right? What do you think, with that in mind, what do you think is the biggest hindrance for cryptocurrency, and what is the biggest threat that could, if so, eliminate? I don't believe it can be eliminated, but hypothetically, what do you think is the biggest threat to cryptocurrency?
I would view it as liquidity in the market, the ability to move in and out of that between currencies, just like you can do with fiat currencies. And our company is working to solve that, and I think others are as well.
One at a time.
Again, like in terms of the cryptocurrency market, that's not going anywhere. Some coins and some will survive, a lot of them will fall. And the ability for me to change something from me to you without having a middleman, that is something that's added value, and someone will grab that and seize that opportunity because it will be 10 times cheaper and faster than what we had before. In terms of the blockchain part, again, I see that as something that opens even much more opportunities, not only the money or the value transfer part of it. So.
Yeah, I guess I think the biggest threat is probably just cumbersome, regulatory bodies acting against crypto, right? I think we don't want to stymie innovation in that way, but it's totally possible, right? It could be from tax laws to, the SEC coming down hard against a lot of crypto exchanges to affect liquidity, to do a bunch of different things to disrupt it, and also take it away from the original sort of, idealism that comes from the cryptosphere. That's what I think the biggest threat is. But to date, I think the government's been pretty hands off, which is comforting.
Perfect.
I think the recent rulings support that too. So they seem to be going in the direction of supporting this market, but tentatively, or not tentatively, slowly, carefully, as they watch it mature and what we're doing and when things have happened.
Awesome. Thank you, and stay bad.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the Bad Crypto Podcast. Stay bad. Does anyone else have a question?
Thank you again for all the information that you shared. On a weekly basis, I work with hundreds of businesses around the state of Texas. And for those businesses who don't want to be left behind, like you mentioned earlier, then what would be a practical first step that you would recommend that they take if they don't have the huge team where they could assign a particular FTE to focus on researching and learning all that they can, then what would be your recommendation for a small business who said, look, we need to get in on this, but we don't know what to do first?
It depends on what they want to achieve. I mean, and how they want to use it. I mean, there's applications, you know, I'll shamelessly plug my own. Just download Digital Town and use the app right there, and they can begin to play. And there's others that do the same. And so participate, you know, find the solution. But it goes back to the question, what are they trying to solve? What problem do they see in the space that they can utilize to solve the problem?
Yeah, I could answer that question in a bunch of different ways. I guess, you know, for someone who's a novice to crypto, I would say the best way to get them interested is to actually be hands-on and use it. I mean, you know, to actually feel like it's real, right? Because to a lot of people, they think it's just, you know, I don't know, monopoly money or whatever, right? So if you actually have, you know, you buy a Decred token, you figure out that process, you have a wallet, you learn how to stake, you do these different things, then all of a sudden you understand the governance mechanisms and you realize how you can incorporate some of these things into your own business or personal life or what have you. So really just like learning by doing and using, but then also like, you know, as much news and whatnot that you can read, it helps.
So this is really a grassroots revolution. So with that, you know, I think being involved in the community is essential. So my advice would just be attend the Bitcoin meetup every Tuesday evening. You know, talk to the developers. I mean, the developers of Decred are there every Tuesday, you know, and they can plug you in with the others, you know, and the people there range from, you know, it's usually 20 people during the bear market, 100 people during the bull market, right? But there's always someone there. So that's the way I would encourage them to get involved.
Yeah, if they don't have the resources or the means to do it, I think like a good idea would be for them to create an internal chapter or group of people that could research what is the disruption that blockchain and this technology brings and what are other examples in their industry that are being disrupted, and try to understand where opportunities arise and then do all the things that they've mentioned.
So I've been presenting to these small businesses. Recently, I've been presenting to the South Austin Business Association. And recently they signed up and they want us to sign up all of their members. And what I'm finding with small businesses is they're doing their business. You know, and they're interested, they want to capture the uplift that they get from utilizing these systems, but they don't want to make that their business. You know, so just like the internet was, you know, it's not to tell them, you know, go buy a router and then get some circuits and then you can, no, they don't want to do that. You know, they just want to get the benefit part. And so that's kind of been my focus lately. And that's why they can use these systems and learn about them, but they don't have to get their hands totally dirty because they're small business. You know, they're 5 or few people generally, right? And they're doing whatever they're doing, a massage therapy or a small doctor's office or, you know, selling some goods and services. They want to use it. They want to benefit from it.
Okay, do we have time for one more question? Okay, yeah.
Cool. So my question is about ICOs, and my question is, why would people ICO over airdrop?
Sure, I'll take this one. So we wrote a piece recently, a thought leadership piece called Smart Drops. You can literally go to smartdrops.network and read about it. And it supports this idea of airdropping, or smart airdropping as a alternative to doing a token sale. But to answer your question, the reason why someone would want to do a token sale is if they believe they can efficiently run a company better than they can just finding people in the community kind of organically. So an ICO or a token sale is just an alternative form of fundraising, right? If you believe that you have the ability the desire, the competency to form a team, to run a team, to manage a team. Like that's a business in and of itself, in addition to actually what you're actually doing as a protocol. Then I would say a token sale makes a lot of sense, right? But if you feel that you want to be more distributed, if there's already enough community engagement from which you can find talent and just reward them through airdrops, I would take that approach instead. That said, they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. But if you're talking about either extremes, that's the logic or the mental model I would apply.
Sure. Okay.
And was there someone with one more question? I don't know. Does anyone else have a question?
What are your thoughts on Bitcoin maximalism? This idea that there is this one coin to rule all other coins.
You don't want to
Just
get into
want
that
to
one?
get some reactions from you guys.
Yeah. Without ruffling feathers, we could just say Bitcoin Core takes more of a digital gold approach, so store value, whereas Bitcoin Cash is more of a medium of exchange, right? We could leave it at that.
Okay. Oh, wait, there's one more question, which, yeah, we can quickly take, I guess. Yeah.
I think Mark should answer this as well, but I believe they're either going to have to participate or they'll legislate and regulate against it. So it's going to be one or the other.
So if we're predicting like 100 years into the future, I don't know if I necessarily see their role, but the technology adoption is very iterative, right? And so right now, if you are running a business, so for example, to the last gentleman's question around ICOs, right? If you're doing a token sale where you currently need a bank to house those funds, right? Because you probably want to hedge your risk if you're doing a token sale on Ether. You don't want to stay in Ether because you don't want the market volatility because you're predicting, what's my operational expenses going to be for the next 12 to 18 months, and you're trying to budget that, so you want fiat exposure, right? That means you need a bank. So a bank is a way right now of kind of bridging the gap of where we currently are to where we think we can be, in 50 to 100 years. Maybe it's not even that long ago, long in the future, but far in the future. But I do think long term that this does pose a big threat to banks. But I think right now it serves actually as an opportunity to them, to capture this market and figure out a way of pivoting. Banks have had a very plush business model for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. This technology has the potential to disrupt that very significantly. So this is kind of a wake-up call. It's not, your business is done. It's you need to find a way of evolving, right, as every industry does, or you will be irrelevant. That's just the name of the game. I would say banks and fiat go hand in hand. So, there's this book called The Sovereign Individual. It's kind of one of the top 10, right, crypto books, and it talks about kind of the elimination of borders and nation states because currency is no longer tied to a jurisdiction or to a government, right? You can kind of create your own currency, your own value in this currency. So. I would say banks and fiat kind of go hand in hand. So what's going to happen is nation states are going to have to treat their citizens more like customers and less like cattle. So that's an actual quote in the book, where they need to, they're competing for your business, denominated in their currency, just like every other crypto company is today.
Okay, Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Decred. Thank you for having us.
Thank you to all our panelists.